Before choice-driven games and interactive movies became a buzzword, one French developer dared to ask, what if a video game could feel like a film you were living inside of? In 2005, David Cage and his studio Quantic Dream released Farenhite, also known as Indigo Prophecy in North America. A game that wasn't just about playing, it was about performing, directing, and feeling. Right from the first moments, it's clear Cage wanted to blur the lines between cinema and gameplay. Cinematic camera angles that track your movements like you're the star of a thriller, split screens that build tension showing different events unfolding at once, and a musical score that isn't just background noise. It syncs with your choices and your emotions, just like a movie soundtrack heightens a film scene. This wasn't about high scores or kill counts. Fahrenheit was about immersion, about stepping into a character's shoes and feeling every moment, no matter how small or strange. At its core, Fahrenheit is a supernatural thriller set in freezing New York. You play as Lucas Kane, an ordinary man who finds himself committing a brutal murder he had no control of. As he struggles to uncover the truth behind his actions, two detectives, Carla Valenti and Tyler Miles, are hot on his trail. It's a story about destiny, guilt, forces far beyond human understanding. This right here is my original PlayStation 2 copy. I actually picked this up back in 2018, just a few weeks before Detroit Become Human came out. I wanted to play through what I liked to call at the time the David Cage trilogy: Fahrenheit, Heavy Rain, and Beyond Two Souls. Leading up to Detroit's release, it felt the perfect way to see how the storytelling evolved over time. If you want to experience this game today, there's also a remastered version available digitally on the PlayStation 4, so you don't need to go hunting down for a physical copy, unless you love collecting, that is. What really set Fahrenheit apart back in 2005 wasn't its graphics or its controls, it was the way it prioritized emotion over traditional gameplay. David Cage wasn't interested in making a shooter or a platformer, or anything that looked like your standard video game. He wanted to create something that he called an interactive drama, where your characters' feelings, fears, and decisions mattered more than mastering a mechanic. In Fahrenheit, you're often performing ordinary tasks, cleaning up crime scenes, talking to a co-worker, even choosing whether or not to flirt with an ex. Moments that matter most in games would usually be skipped or automated through, forcing you to live characters' heads and carry their emotional weight. Of course, this focus wasn't always smooth. The controls would feel clunky and heavy, and the use of quick-time events even got in the way of the drama. But even when it stumbled, Fahrenheit's ambition was clear. Cage wanted players to feel, not just win. To push the emotional immersion even further, Fahrenheit borrows heavily from the language of cinema, not just in story, but in every scene that's presented. One of the most striking techniques Cage uses is split-screen storytelling. Just like a thriller movie, you're constantly aware of multiple threads happening at once. While you're desperately trying to hide evidence of a crime, you can see in real time the police pulling up outside. It's a simple trick, but it builds tension without needing any extra dialogue or flashy cutscenes. The camera work is just as dynamic. Instead of static third-person views, Fahrenheit uses sweeping shots, sudden zooms, and fast cuts between characters, almost like you're watching a gritty TV drama unfold live. Even slower moments are framed thoughtfully, with camera lingering just long enough to let players soak in the mood. It's clear Cage didn't just want Fahrenheit to be played, he wanted it to be directed by the player. Of course, no interactive drama would be complete without player choice. Fahrenheit gives players a sense of agency early on, letting you decide how to handle key situations, clean up the crime scene or bolt, lie during an interrogation, or tell the truth. In the early hours, it really feels like your decisions matter. Small choices ripple outward, shaping how characters react and how much suspicion is cast your way. But as the story moves forward, branching illusions start to fade. No matter what path you take, the major plot beats coverage onto a single road. The decision changes how things happen, but not what happens. It's one of Fahrenheit's biggest growing points. Cage had the vision for an emotionally reactive story, but the technology, time, and budget couldn't fully deliver the dream. Still, It laid the foundation for the deeper branching narratives he would chase in future video games. For all of its early strengths, the game eventually does something very unexpected. Around the halfway point, the grounded murder mystery takes a very hard left turn and becomes a full-blown science fiction, and in the supernatural territory. Secret cults, ancient prophecies, AI conspiracies, and psychic kung fu battles that you kind of find in The Matrix or Dragon Ball Z. A tonal whiplash, and is still one of the most diverse aspects of the game. Some players and critics admire the ambition of it, and the way Cage swung for the fences without fear, but others felt like the story kind of lost its soul, sacrificing the emotional tension for whatever this is. Was this ambition, or was it a lack of focus maybe? Honestly, probably both. Either way, Farenhite's genre shift was one of the strangest decisions made for such a gaming cinema piece. And unfortunately in this case, it didn't really pay off. But back to more positive notes, another crucial piece of the cinematic feel in this game comes from its music. Cage didn't just want a soundtrack, he wanted songs and scores that reflected what the characters were feeling in real time. Licensed tracks like Santa Monica by one of my favourite bands, Theory of a Dead Man, pop up quite often during introspective moments, and it's used to reflect Lucas's crumbling mental state without needing to spell it out in dialogue. And then there's original scores, composed by none other than Angelo Badalamenti, the legendary mind behind Twin Peaks. His haunting, dreamlike music adds surreal, otherworldly atmosphere to this game. It's another example of how Cage blended game design with cinematic techniques, using sound not just as background noise, but as an emotional guidepost. When it came to action, Farenhite didn't rely on traditional combat or platforming. Instead, it leaned heavily, and I mean heavily, on quick-time events. During high-stakes scenes, players had to quickly hit button combinations shown on the screen to keep the story moving. It was Cage's way of keeping the cinematic feel while still demanding some level of player input. At its best, this method made you feel right inside the action, reacting in real time, heart racing, trying not to mess up. But over time, the constant button mashing could start to feel a bit tedious, more like homework than heroism. Especially when the inputs got so complicated, you end up watching the prompts more than the actual story unfold. Still, QTEs became David Cage's signature, love them or hate them, and Farenhite was the first time he really committed to it at full speed. Another big innovation Farenhite brought to the table was its use of multiple playable characters. Instead of sticking to one perspective, the story constantly flips between Lucas, the man on the run, and the detectives chasing him, Carla and Tyler. It was pretty novel at the time, especially in gaming, to see the narrative split across different viewpoints like this. Putting you in both the shoes of the hunter and the hunted, Cage made players question their own loyalties, and add layers of tension to every decision. It also made the story feel bigger and more complex, almost like you were weaving together a whole TV show instead of just playing a single character's journey. It's important to remember, Farenhite was an insanely ambitious project for the time. The original plan was even bigger, deeper branching paths, more complex relationships, a much more polished second half. But its development dragged on, and the time, the budget, and pressure would start piling up. Cage and his team had to cut corners, entire scenes were scrapped, mechanics were simplified, and the US version was even more censored than the European version to avoid an adult-only rating. What we ended up with was a game full of both brilliant ideas and frustrating flaws, a bold experiment that showed what gaming cinema could be, even if it didn't fully stick the landing. But you can't deny its impact. Farenhite laid the groundwork for everything David Cage would later build on: bigger budgets, more refined storytelling, and a deeper commitment to blending games and movies into something completely unique. Next time, we'll look at how David Cage took the lessons of Farenhite and turned them into one of PlayStation 3's biggest hits, a game that would redefine what an interactive drama could be: Heavy Rain.